Chapter 4: Nightmare. After accompanying Angelite to her tent, Meldream returned to his own and rested the heavy blade on the ground. He was mesmerized. For a while, Meldream thought over the events of the morning, and all he'd learned about Meridia and the priestess's resonance. Yawning, he rolled on his side with a fur blanket pulled over himself. Leaving one candle lighted, placed safely out of harm's way, Meldream began to doze. Immediately he panicked and sat upright. He heard another whisper right beside his ear. It had been so quiet, but he knew the whisper was not from outside the tent. Slowly he refocused on the black blade. Nothing seemed odd or out of place. It was just a sword, he reassured himself. But he knew it wasn't true. The sword was far from ordinary. Thinking for a moment, he had an idea. Kneeling, he held the blade horizontally in both hands and began to let himself drift into a meditative state. He did so out of curiosity, experimenting with ways Larkham had tried teaching him in the past. Meldream began drawing deep breaths, picturing a vast ocean in his mind, and sitting on a cliff's edge near a beach. The empty air was filled with seagulls flying high, while storm clouds formed above, and waves rhythmically crashed on the shore below. Suddenly, Meldream opened his eyes to find himself still inside what appeared to be his own imagination. Arising from the mud, he wondered why he was no longer in his tent. He couldn't wake up. He was alive in this place, breathing the ocean air and feeling the rain on his skin. Lightning flashed in the distance, followed by a crack of thunder rolling its fury across the bleak black sky. Without mercy, the growing typhoon enraged the wind and excessive downpour, all as if to batter Meldream personally. A sound he wasn't familiar with boomed across the vast plains behind him. Turning, the tribal wandered up the sodden verge, and what he saw next horrified him. Thousands of soldiers and thundering war machines marched with purpose across the landscape. Tracked tanks lighted the sky with deafening salvos. He followed their neon traces through the sky, only to find them greet monstrous, translucent, towering insects roaming the horizon like looming specters. Cacophonous explosions ripped into their gelatinous hides, the weapons finding their marks. Defiance was roared, and the enraged titans strode forward, pounding the ground on their many spindly legs, toward the men and women littering the field of war. Shaking the earth and bearing their pincers in their far-reaching stride, the insects whipped their flailing appendages into the columns of soldiers and tanks. Flesh, steel, and carbon fiber were torn apart in a deluge of red gore and sparks. Quaking at the sight, Meldream fell to his knees. These creatures, the size of skyscrapers, lurked within Larkham's legends, behemoths. Glancing behind himself, he saw something else just as terrifying. Thousands of Anunnaki, much like the one he had fought, were pouring out of the sea. The battlefield was emptying as the human soldiers began fleeing in terror. The earth-quaking insects smashed the tank columns aside, putting to rest the mighty cannons. Meldream, seeing what was about to happen to the troops, rushed at them, waving his arms around maniacally in the vain hope they would see him. When he shouted, however, no words left his vocal cords. Phantasmic men and women merely passed through him with no hindrance, leaving him with their cold, emotional horror. With every spectre he was pushed backward, recoiling from their distress, trying to keep his footing in the middle of the bloody chaos. The Anunnaki, on reaching the shores with momentous speed, pounced upon the morale-stricken soldiers, eviscerating scores of them. The troops fired their weapons hopelessly into the alien horde of writhing scales, and, just like the tide, were swept back. Looking again over his shoulder, Meldream witnessed the arrival of a unique person. This short stranger, no more than 5 feet in height, and unbothered by the death that surrounded her, strode toward the beachfront. Her identity was hidden, thanks to her dark hood and cloak. Yet, dangling from the hood was extremely long blonde hair blowing wickedly in the wind. She turned to face the stricken soldiers, her physique thin and beautifully curvy in the confines of her blackened leathery suit. Held in this stranger's hand was a thin dark blade. Gripping the hilt with her second hand, the mysterious female raised the long sword above her head, and, on singing a long, high-pitched note, something wondrous happened. As if by command, the sword glowed with a silver hue and grew in length and width, morphing and now resembling the two-handed blade Moldream fully recognized as his own. Gawking, the tribal watched as the cloaked woman charged straight into the writhing mass of Anunnaki that towered over her. Bursting with silver light, she swung the two-handed blade left to right, dismembering and maiming without hindrance, mercy, or prejudice. The vicious aliens in great numbers fell upon the cloaked woman. She stabbed the tip of her blade into the blood-sodden soil. It was in that moment that Moldream heard a word on the wind pass from the stranger's lips. "Retrinaman!" A bright white light enveloped her, blinding man and monsters. Briefly, Moldream protected his delicate eyes by raising his hand. Then, lowering it steadily, he saw that she had obliterated the Anunnaki surrounding her. Moldream's attention, however, returned to the thousands of soldiers, their ranks decimated. Though diminished in number, the men and women roared their last, defiant stand, trapped hopelessly between both the behemoths and the fierce Anunnaki. With fang or talon, survivors' chests were ripped apart in bloody fashion, the beasts feasting on their lungs, spilled intestines, or still beating hearts. Silence fell, save for the wind and rain. Finally, for the first time in this world, Moldream could roar in sheer terror. Until now, he was just an observer, but no more. Something had changed. Moldream knew he was no longer safe. His horrified roar had attracted unwanted attention. In complete silence, the numberless red glares of the aliens turned toward him. Bloody ecstasy widened their rasping snouts. Moldream sprinted toward the stranger, in the vain hope he could awaken from this nightmare. She was so close. Surely and slowly, he fought with all his strength to keep going, treading through the disfigured phantoms. The beasts came for him fast, their reptilian sprint filled with supernatural energy. Thunder synchronized with his every step. Wailing souls grabbed at his ankles. With the Anunnaki mere paces behind him, the tribal leapt, his hands and arms outstretched. Eyes wide open, he gripped both the hilt and woman's hand. Her hood flinched and she snapped her head to face him directly, her features completely obscured by darkness. She released an audible gasp. With both their hands connected to the blade, something stirred from within the sword's dark alloy, deep, resonating voices of male and female origin. "Awaken us!" "No!" Moldream shouted. Panting deliriously, his body was soaked in a cold sweat. Much to his surprise, it was already morning, yet he was still posed on his knees, holding the sword. I've been kneeling like this the whole night," he muttered to himself, eyes downcast. "Right, not weird at all." He was acting erratically as he slotted the weapon securely in the scabbard and breathed deeply. Once he had collected everything he needed for his journey, he opened the flap of the tent with a rough tug and ventured outside. The camp was completely silent and still. Only a few sentries, keeping watch throughout the night, could be seen on the outskirts of the camp, their spears at ease on their cloaked shoulders. Stretching, yawning, then swiping both palms down his weary face, the young man made his way to the temple to seek solace from any awakening eyes. Once he had climbed the steps, he peered at the morning sun from the balcony of the ruined temple. It was there he was to meet the priestess before they set off. Moldream mulled over his frightening vision, his thoughts focused on the Deadfield Plains. Before the nightmare, he never quite feared it the way he did now. Inspecting his inventory one more time to ensure he did not forget anything, he considered this long journey meant traveling as lightly as possible. "I wonder if Angelite's ready yet," he spoke to himself, letting out a powerful yawn. "It'll be the afternoon by the time we get anywhere." Moldream's knee gave way as he felt a whack on the back of his leg. He jerked around in a fright to see Angelite staring at him with a mischievous look about her. "It's too early for games," he groaned half-heartedly. "You seem jumpy and serious today," she said, pointing her finger at him, so close to his face that he had to cross his eyes. I thought I'd get your attention. I've been stood behind you for a while now, and you didn't even notice. Why, was I meant to? He said, laughing. The cheek, she said, whacking her staff on his ankle. Moldream yelped and comically rubbed his leg. She threatened to hit him again, but he accepted defeat and held his palms out in defense. Good, she seems much happier, he thought. Silly man, she said, laughing lightly, leaving Moldream to shake his head and smirk. You'll get more of where that came from if you're disrespectful again. All right, he said, smiling happily and lowering his hands. Anyway, she replied, gently placing her index finger on his lower lip. Let's get going, shall we? Moldream gave her a firm nod and slung his sword to his side. I was with Larkham this morning, Angelite said, carefully placing her feet on the stairs that led the way down. We did a tribal ceremony for my friends. That's great to hear, he said. Sorry I wasn't there, I didn't know, or else I would have joined you. It's okay, she said, hopping from the last 2 steps to the ground. It was just me and him. I didn't want to raise any commotion. Fair enough, he said, leading the way out of the temple. I guess you feel better for doing it. Kind of, she said, sighing briefly as the pair strolled through the temple archway to the world outside. I'll feel better when I can get them home where they belong. I promise I'll do my best to help you, he said, reaching out and clasping her shoulder. She stopped mid-walk and turned to face him. Thank you, she said, smiling, hugging him unexpectedly. It's okay, he said, returning the gesture. So then, shall we? The priestess let go and looked him straight in the eyes. Yep, lead the way. Larkham, partially hidden behind his tent, watched as Angelite and Moldream left the safety of the camp, before making his way to the temple to start the day with another round of stories for the children. A concerned expression troubled his wrinkled and weathered face. Look after each other, you two, and be careful. Angelite and Moldream's month-long journey had begun. The pair walked steadily down the hill and into the city, chatting and passing plants and other wildlife that had grown over the grey brick walls. Birds of all varieties nesting in the ruins sang as the sun crept over the horizon. The empty streets were peaceful as the couple strode through them. Thanks to Moldream's knowledge of the city, they could avoid the most dangerous, hazardous areas. Along the way, he told the priestess about his disturbing vision. That's quite the tale, she said, though judging by Moldream's troubled frown, she was being careful with her words. How to put this? I believe you were definitely experiencing something. It's just I've never heard anything like it before. Maybe your weapon was there this whole time? Perhaps it's older than I thought. I feel stupid mentioning it now, Moldream said, releasing a sigh. Just forget I told you any of it. No, please go on, she said, smiling. You sure? He said, glancing briefly at her to see if she was poking fun at him. Of course, Angelite said, nodding. You're talking to someone who can shape reality with words. Point taken. He grinned and shrugged. Okay, so, going back to what you said. I think you're right. This sword is older than it looks. It has to be. Wherever it came from, it has a power like no other, she said, her voice strong one moment, and then muttering the next as if talking to herself. It reacts to resonance somehow. Yet last night, it didn't react at all. And there's no visible crystal cores attached to it either. Moldream snapped his fingers in front of her narrow nose. I don't think I'm the only one that daydreams, he said, chuckling. Oh, sorry, she said. I've always been one for mysteries and trying to uncover the truth behind them. If there's something I don't know, I have to look into it to understand it. I've always been like that. Fair enough, Moldream said. Anyway, you keep mentioning resonance? Can you explain how it works? I wondered how long it would be until you asked, she replied chirpily. I guess I should start from the beginning. All magic that you know or have heard of, including everything in the world around us, is formed from a single source of power, known as resonance. It's everywhere you look, from you and me to even the stars in the heavens. The stars? The stars also have to come from somewhere. In the heavens, in this great spiral of life, there emanates a sound, a song so strong that it creates all the stars and more. Do you get the idea? It's like a living heartbeat for all things. Moldream stared blankly into the distance, thinking deeply. Angelite leaned forward briefly in front of him and clicked her fingers in front of his eyes, in imitation of him moments before. "Oh, sorry, please carry on, I am listening," he said, smiling at her. "So, how does this power work exactly? From what I've seen so far, it's like it comes out of nowhere." Angelite stopped Moldream gently with a hand on his shoulder. She looked around the street for an example. "You see that small puddle of water just by your feet?" she said. "Yeah, what about it?" he muttered, his brow drooping in confusion. "This free power, or energy, is what we call resonance," she said. "It has been named scientifically as particles, molecules, or in more basic terms, atoms. Atoms are the hollow carriers of energy. Everything you see or touch is created from these atoms. So many, in fact, that it's truly countless." "Wow, okay. Just trying to get my head around your words," Moldream said. "So if we're, what, atoms? And atoms are hollow. Does that mean we're hollow? I just picture lots of empty space." "Great question," she replied. "But let me finish, I'm getting to that." "All right, but what you're describing is nothing like Larkham's knowledge," he said, grinning. "This stuff is really technical when I compare it in my head. Anyway, carry on." The priestess happily nodded. "Right," she said. "So these hollow atoms are locked with certain charges which orbit them. These are called electrons, protons, and neutrons. Each atom has the potential of changing itself into something else because of these charges, which we nickname the Holy Trinity in Meridia. Anyhow, atoms are energy, and energy can freely change its form. Simply put, these atoms can change their frequency, or energy field, and can be manipulated with the most basic energy of all: sound." "Sound?" Moldream frowned. "Wait, let me get this right. So atoms, or energy, as you put it, can be manipulated simply by sound?" "Yes," Angelite said, nodding enthusiastically. "There are many sounds that can manipulate the world and the universe, in fact. However, most are invisible to our senses." "I don't get it," Moldream said with his arms crossed. "If it were true, how is it I can't just do what you did last night by simply having this conversation right now?" "Oh, there is a way to do it," she said, turning to playfully poke him on his nose with her index finger. His eyes narrowed. "The secret is complete focus." Moldream raised an eyebrow and said, "Say what now?" "To cast resonance, you must completely focus your mind and your voice," the priestess said. "Some words work better than others. In Meridia, we call such words power words. But it isn't just the words, there must be a flow to them too." "I think I see what you're getting at," Moldream said. "Which is why you tend to sing with your words." "Exactly," she exclaimed. "I'm starting to think you're a natural student." "I'm really not," Moldream said, laughing light-heartedly. But he could read her attractive smile and beaming green eyes, and could tell she was being serious. He cleared his throat. "But hey, I guess if you think so." "Oh yeah, why are we stood by this puddle again?" Angelite knelt and picked up a pebble. Standing up, she raised her arm above the shallow pool and simply let the stone drop with a splash. "Ripples?" "Just imagine that the puddle is a round, hollow atom," she said. "Now imagine that those ripples are waves of sound inside that atom." "Oh, I see, that's actually quite clever and simple," he remarked, thinking he had finally grasped the basics. "The real science is a lot more complex, but what these protons, neutrons, and electrons do is lock that sound frequency into certain energies or forms," she said. "The rim of the puddle, you could imagine, is that Holy Trinity barrier, locking in place that one puddle or frequency of energy. Energy only changes form, it's never destroyed. Therefore, this one puddle could change its frequency to represent some different form of resonance." "That bit sounds a bit more complicated," he said, smiling. "Sorry, it'll probably take me longer to better understand it, but I think I see what you're talking about now. I'm glad you do, she said excitedly, clasping her hands together. Moldream continued to stare at the puddle as he went over the lesson, until Angelite tugged his arm lightly so they could move on. To continue from what I've just taught you, she said. Resonance connects all kinds of life together, such as spirits. We can't see spirits normally with our eyes, unless we encourage the resonance inside of us. We are connected, heart and soul, to everything that exists, even if a person doesn't know it. There is so much more to learn and understand, though. I don't hold all the answers. I guess there is so much we don't understand, he said, glancing at a flock of birds flying overhead. This sword, the Anunnaki, resonance. I've learned more in the past week than I have since I was a child, listening to Larkham's tales. Angelite paused and asked him, By the way, are you okay, Moldream? You do look awfully tired. The tribal chortled. Yeah, I'm fine, thanks, he said, rolling his aching shoulders. Don't worry about me. I'm sure I'll catch up on my sleep soon. So then, what's the connection with your singing, and the runes that glow on your staff or my sword? This question Angelite found hard to answer. Instead, she openly stared at the young man's rough stubble and blue eyes. Snapping herself out of it, she blushed and eventually responded. Good question, my eager student, she said, her tone playful with a beaming smile to suit. My stave is a tool that helps me focus energy, and the symbols serve as a bridge for the energy, so certain resonance spells can work. You see, crystal cores give you access to spells that you can use if you don't know the required songs to trigger resonance, or if the chanting for a spell would take too long. An example for that is if you're in a dangerous situation. For example, I used my emerald crystal cores to heal you quickly yesterday, while singing my healing spell in tandem. Because everything in existence is a resonating frequency, we can tune our words harmoniously for the desired result, but some can be detrimental. Some tunes work well, while some do not. It depends on the structure of your notes. Moldream's brow rose in confusion, replying, You're starting to lose me again. Do you mean what you did last night with your singing? Let's see, for example, she said, continuing their casual pace. A flame has a certain resonance. If you wanted to conjure a flame, then all you need to do is tune into that certain frequency to use the energy that the flame shares. However, it takes a lot of mental focus to achieve this without a ruby crystal core, since you need to strike a balance with your words and thoughts, or a combination of the two. I can't actually conjure any flames without a source of it nearby. The strain is too much until I improve. Well, if it wasn't for you yesterday, I wouldn't have stood a chance, Moldream said. I think you're doing just fine at the moment. Thank you, she said, releasing a small sigh. I try my best, but as I said, I'm still improving. It just takes a lot of practice. There are some in the order of spirit who can create fire with just their voice or mind alone. But it's very rare for a person to accomplish the desired effects without some sort of instrument to work with. Crystal cores, for example, can be used to amplify the resonance you wish to use, which is why I use crystals. They hold the key for me, but I'm also a sucker for collecting them. I think I'm beginning to understand. Oh, he said suddenly. We should be at the bridge soon. It takes a while to cross over. That's okay, she said. I'm enjoying this walk. Also, he said, stopping for a moment to fidget in his pocket. Sorry I didn't mention this sooner, but we found these lying around in the library yesterday when we went back for your friends. He revealed a pouch and undid the knot. Gently rustling the satchel, a few crystal cores rolled onto his palm. Oh gosh, Angelite gasped. Thank you for finding these. I thought I lost them. They fell out of my backpack yesterday when I got caught under the debris. Before Moldream could say anything, she ambushed him with a hug. Whoa, he said, stumbling backward and just managing to keep the pouch from falling. Careful, I almost dropped them. Oh, sorry, she said, releasing him. Say, shall we have some fun? Moldream raised an eyebrow. Fun? Here? In the middle of the street? Yeah, she replied. What on earth did you think she gasped. then suddenly smacked Maldream's ankle with her staff. He winced and cried in pain, hopping on one foot to rub the other, but grinned from ear to ear, lifting his hands afterward to instantly concede. Angelite's face turned red. "You cheeky." "Okay, it's okay," he said, laughing. "Just playing." The priestess crossed her arms and frowned at him briefly, but was unable to hold back a laugh and a smile seconds later. "I'll let you off," she said. Maldream smiled. "So, what did you really have in mind?" "Let me see," she said, snatching the leather pouch from his hands and rummaging through the glowing contents. "Let's try this one." "Nice, but what next?" Maldream asked, raising an eyebrow and staring at the red crystal core in her hand. "Well, ideally," she said, "you need a weapon or piece of armor with a slot fabricated in it. You can use the crystal core as is, but with this one, you'll kind of want it slotted in something, rather than to hold it with your bare hand." "What does that crystal core do?" Maldream asked. "It's a ruby core," she replied. "When you use it, it'll shoot a river of flame or a fireball, depending on the tone of your voice when used in conjunction with a power word." "Okay, well," he said, pausing to think for a second. "I doubt I'd be able to put that in my sword, but," he added, withdrawing one of his concealed daggers from his arm scabbard, "I have this on me, could it work?" "Oh, perfect," she replied. "I had the same thought about your sword a moment ago. I wouldn't want to damage it or try adding a slot to it at all unless we're back in Meridia." Are we able to add a slot to this dagger?" he asked. "I have one spare link on me," she said, kneeling and rummaging through her large backpack. "Yeah, here it is." Oh, it's slightly damaged," she said, frowning at it between her fingers as she inspected the slightly warped metallic ring. "We'll give it a go, though. Pass me your knife." Maldream passed her the short blade handle first, and watched her curiously. She placed the thick ring slot at the base of the blade, just above the hilt. With the tip of her nail, she hummed ever so lightly and pushed on the ring with her index finger. Suddenly, the metal began to heat, and after 30 seconds, the slot had melded to the metal of the old blade. "There we go," she said, raising the dagger and inspecting it. "It's a little rough, but without the proper tools, I don't expect this damaged slot to last more than 1 or 2 spells." He smiled. "I think you're a miracle worker," he said. Angelite chuckled. "I wouldn't go that far," she said, putting her backpack back on and rising to stand straight. "Now this is what you do if you want to use magic." "Okay, this will be fun to watch," Maldream said, eyes wide in anticipation. "Excuse me," Angelite replied. "Who said anything about me doing it?" "Wait, what?" Maldream blurted. "You want me to use it?" "Of course. If I was going to use it, I would have slotted it into my staff," she said, grinning, jamming the ruby core into the shoddy slot. "I told you it will be fun." Well," he stammered nervously. "If you insist." Angelite passed him the dagger handle first. Maldream gripped his shoddy knife and inspected the glowing red crystal. He didn't feel any different, not that he expected to, but it felt awesome nonetheless. "So, teacher," he said, smirking, "what do I do now?" Angelite murmured. "Okay, student, aim for that empty glass bottle over there, on the other side of the street." Maldream turned around, seeing the empty bottle laid on the weed-covered pavement. "Okay, I see it. Now what?" The priestess approached him from behind, gripped his right hand and, controlling his arm, leveled it horizontally while pressing her chest tightly against his back. Maldream's eyes widened. "Anything the matter?" she asked, smiling. No, nothing the matter," he croaked, clearing his throat. "So now, what next?" "Okay, so," she said, adjusting their stance, turning slightly to the side to prepare their legs to stand correctly. "When using offensive resonance, you can sometimes get a little kick back. By standing like this, we can use our feet to brace for the recoil." Maldream chuckled. "You make it sound like we're firing a gun." "Oh, you know what those are?" she said. "In which case, it's a little like that." "Okay, so now what do we do?" All right, it may not work first time, but prepare yourself, she said, pressing her chest against Moldream's back one more time. He had to bite his lower lip to focus. Focus on that bottle and repeat after me. Flamash. Okay, he said, nodding. Drawing in a deep breath, he squeezed the hilt. The ruby core grew brighter as if it could feel the preparation. Flamash. A sudden fireball erupted around the glass bottle, as was expected, but the sudden explosive, blasting wave certainly wasn't. The playful fireball roared like a few kilos of dynamite. With instinctive reflexes, Moldream covered Undulite from the white-hot eruption. They were suddenly thrown backward from the terrifying force of the shockwave, and came to a stop 10 yards down the road. The tribal's arms felt raw from bearing the brunt of the short flight and rolling on the concrete to protect the priestess. He rolled on his back and released his hand from the back of her head. Their ears rang briefly. Angelite, I'm so sorry. The priestess began to laugh. She was laid on Moldream's chest, but pushed herself upright and straddled him, her long red hair a complete wind-swept mess, covering her face. She blew a portion of it away, revealing her mad smile and glistening green eyes filled with absolute joy. Promise me this, she said, finally controlling her laughter. Promise me you will not use a crystal core ever again. Moldream laughed and raised his hand to cover his face in embarrassment. I promise. Both continued laughing for a short while, the sun beaming down and a gentle warm breeze caressing them. Okay, Angelite eventually said. I'm done laughing, I think. Me too, Moldream said, still smiling. We best get up and keep going. Yeah, you're right, Angelite said, her hands moving to his chest. Can't sit around here all day, she added, deliberately pushing down on him to push herself up and off. Oof, he gasped, not expecting the sudden thrust. Thanks for that. No problem, she replied, laughing mischievously, only to then reach her hand out to him. Okay, I'll stop playing now. He smirked, gripping her hand lightly. Please don't. Moldream rose fully to his feet. Angelite gripped and hugged him. Thank you, she said. The tribal shrugged. No, thank you, he replied. I think you're an amazing teacher. The priestess leaned slightly backward to stare in his eyes. You think so? Most definitely, he said, smiling and nodding. Anyway, Angelite said, what on earth was that energy? Energy? He wondered. Yeah, she said. I don't know why or what got you so hot and bothered. Pardon my bad pun, but that explosion should not have been that huge. Moldream stammered, holding his tongue, as to knowing the potential real reason. Beginner's luck? She hummed briefly. Yeah, we could go with that, she said, wickedly grinning and squinting her playfully hawkish eyes at him. Let's get going then, she added, letting go of him and picking up her staff nearby. We still have a long way to go, don't we? True, Moldream said, picking up his dagger. It's a nice day for it. The pair continued through the deserted streets as the sun approached noon, but bad weather loomed on the horizon. I hope it doesn't rain, Moldream said in undertoned irritation. I'm not in the mood for those dark clouds. Yeah, it would be a shame, Angelite said. I'm having a nice time on this walk, similar to when I was traveling here. I do feel safe with you beside me. She glanced at Moldream walking with his hands in his coat pockets, staring at the ground, a grin stretched from ear to ear. He looked up and their eyes met. You know what? He said. I can't remember smiling so much. Me either, she replied, linking arms with him. The bridge appeared broken in places where the weather had taken a toll over the years. Rust blanketed ancient iron, a testament of humanity's past achievements in engineering. Beyond the bridge, the pair began their long trek to the other side of the city, across the large winding river below them. Above the couple, birds flew, their nests in between the bridge girders. The avians were enjoying the last of the sunlight, before the menacing thunderclouds drew nearer. The river, leading out to the ocean, glimmered with a red hue as the lowering sun turned a shade of crimson. Striding steadily, the pair gazed at the tranquil vista in brief silence. After a while, Moldream broke the silence. "Can I ask you something?" "What's that?" Angelite said, turning her eyes away from the horizon. "I was just wondering, what's it like, this Meridia?" he asked. "You also mentioned this order of spirit that you belong to?" "Good memory, yes. I'm a priestess in the Order of Spirit," she sweetly replied. "We mainly practice resonance and aid in any way we can for the greater good of Meridia. We specialize in teaching others how to use resonance, but above all, we are really gifted with crystals." "Ah, now the last part of your lesson earlier makes that much more sense," Moldream said, releasing a quick chuckle. "I should have worked it out. As for the city, I don't feel the same way about it like you do with Meridia." "Yeah, I can understand how you'd feel that way," Angelite said, frowning, staring at the ruined tower blocks ahead in the distance. "In Meridia, we work well together with other guilds. You'll find out more when we reach my home. You'll learn so much more there than what I could ever teach or tell you." At the end of the last segment of the bridge, the two sat down for a moment to rest. Moldream at first was very edgy in regard to his surroundings. Raising his finger to his lips for a moment, he frowned and listened. "It's okay, we're good," he said. "You had me worried there," she said, releasing a sigh. "What were you listening for?" "Just listening out for any assholes," he said. "The people in this city aren't the best sort of people to get to know." "I see," Angelite said, biting her lower lip lightly. "You know what?" Moldream said, eager to take her mind off the subject. "You've taught me a lot, and the day isn't over yet. Resonance, magic. It's something I've never really thought about much before. Sure, I've heard plenty of stories, but you bring all of those stories to life. Maybe I needed to find a more interesting teacher than my boring old man." "I said it before, I think you would make an excellent student," she said. "Except for, when you blow everything up." "Not my fault," Moldream said, locking eyes briefly with the priestess, sensing the playful intent behind her mischievous green eyes that he adored. "In the meantime, let's eat," he added. "We've got a long way to go until we're through the city." "This will cheer you up and add a little protein to you," she said, whipping out a mechanical contraption and emptying her bag of rations and supplies. "By the spirits," he remarked, staring at her fingers as they activated a flat red crystal beneath and attached to the device. "Do they have things like that all over the place in Meridia?" "You mean this?" she said, preparing the food. "It's just a simple traveling stove. We have many things that make our lives easier in Meridia. You could say we have many luxuries." "You make Meridia sound like one of Larkham's spiritual realms that he keeps on and on about," Moldream said, smirking. "Well, I wouldn't go that far. Once you get there, you'll probably feel cheated," she replied. "You'll probably not grow so tired of it in some ways like I did before I left. You'll have more respect." "I see," Moldream said, nodding. "I guess now that you're sitting on my side of the ocean, you look back and think how lucky you are. It gives you a newfound respect for your home, I guess." "There's no other way of saying it," she said, releasing a long sigh. "But yes, you're right." "I wouldn't worry," he said. "You've been through a lot traveling these lands. When we get back to your home, you'll be saving many people." Angelite suddenly clasped her hands together, raising them in front of her in gratitude. She smiled warmly, with hope in her eyes, and said, "That's our mission really, isn't it? The thought of saving your whole tribe, it fills me with purpose." "I love it." Moldream nodded at her, smirking. "We'll get it done, don't you worry." "Yes," she said, letting out an excited squeal. "We will." Soon enough, the smell of food wafted through the breeze as the pair ate their meal. White avian meat, bread, and vegetables stirred in a broth, all of which Moldream was unaccustomed to. "I have never tasted anything so amazing," the tribal said, slurping down the last of the contents of his bowl. "And what was that I saw you add earlier?" "Oh, these," she said, picking up the simple vials. "It's only salt and pepper." "I can't thank you enough," he said, burping lightly. "Fuck me, that was amazing. No worries, I enjoy cooking, she said, laughing lightly, her heart filled with joy on hearing Muldream lavish her with praise. Next time, I'll cook you something different, and see if you like that too. Will you? He blurted, gasping. But only if you don't mind. Of course not, Angelite said, her smile turning into a sinister grin. Providing you behave yourself.